The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throb in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too evil and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly Podcast coming to you once again Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. It is actually our second episode of the day, literally 5 minutes apart. So you guys notice on the live feed here. I'm here again. Now it's on basketball here, of course, with my man, our weekly here, Greg Hrinya of NBA author, analyst, all around good guy. Greg, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, as always.
So the last episode I was doing with Kyle, like literally 5 minutes ago. We got some people in the chat ask us about college basketball and the tourney and all that stuff. I'm gonna talk about the tournament, and we will talk about the tournament on the back of this episode. That's all set for you guys. I told you guys we'll be doing that on this episode, so look out for that. All NBA here, of course, but we're also live on all podcast catchers, especially on YouTube, Earnest Speak Podcast on YouTube at Earnest Speak Pod, there on Twitter, on my Twitter page at EJ Christian 7, on Facebook, of course, and my Facebook page as well too, also, and of course, audio. You can find us on audio, on all audio platforms, as well as TikTok. Where you can find the show on TikTok, not the entire show, but we'll have clips of the show on TikTok as well. So you'll see Greg also in some of these clips there. Actually, Greg has been causing some controversy. Some of our commenters on TikTok actually lately. Some of his hot takes on things. So, Greg, you're good for that now. see now you're getting comfortable doing this show every week now. So now you're starting to, you're not hot take-ish, but you do have some takes that people like. What's he talking about?
Which take was it? The SGA winning MVP?
SGA was one. There was another one also too with the Lakers, not, possibly, winning the title. Now, of course, Laker fans are ornery anyway in general, so I get it. But surprisingly, I've heard any pushback on their Spo takes.
Surprisingly, well, I guess people are watching them, so
people may agree with you that Spo may be a little overrated. I disagree with that, but I get it. So anyway, you actually, this is something I wanted to talk about last week, and we decided to pivot to this week. The New York Knicks, I want to talk about real quick. They're a good team. They're probably a finals contender. And yet I feel like this team has a ceiling. And their ceiling is lower, I believe, because of their coach, Tom Thibedeau. And now we're in March now, and obviously we've seen everybody's talking about now the headlines about what he does. He's doing this for years for the record with his rosters, like overplaying his starters, playing short rotations, and then they have no legs later in the playoffs. And of course, you have three of the five guys in the league that have the most minutes in the league are all New York Knicks. I think it's Bridges is one. Do you know the other two? The other two, I think, is
it's got to be Anunoby and Hart.
Anunoby and Hart, right? Lead the league in minutes. And I think, look, I like Tom Thibedeau. I think Tom Thibedeau's a very good coach. But Tom Thibedeau, I believe, where it's been Chicago, where it's been Minnesota, and now New York, I believe as good a coach he is, because of his style, there's a ceiling to this Knicks success. And I think as good as they are and talented they are on roster-wise, I don't see him being Boston in the same game series. And I don't see him at this point in Cleveland. More I see the Cavs now, I'm like, I don't know if I see them beating the Cavs either. Do the Knicks have a Thibs problem?
Well, it depends. If the goal is to win a championship, then I would say yes, they have a Thibs problem. If the goal is to just be like, a top 10 team, then I would say no. But I mean, obviously, what they spent to put this team together, you give up 5 first-round picks for Bridges. They didn't really give up that much for Cat. I mean, obviously, you give up DiVincenzo, that was a loss. But I mean, I think they were ready to get rid of Randall. But I mean, point being, they invested a lot in this roster. with the goal of being a championship contender. I mean, on paper, they're a championship contender because when you're nearly 20 games over 500, I mean, they're 43-24 right now. I mean, third place in the East pretty comfortably. You've got to put them in that mix in the top 6 or 7 teams. But I don't see them beating Boston or Cleveland. I think both those teams have a better coach. And I feel like some of what he does in the regular season is a little bit smoke and mirrors because like you're playing your guys 37, 38 minutes, whereas like a lot of the teams you're playing against are not playing their guys those minutes. So you have better players on the floor for an extended period of time. And one thing I want to say in his defense, I wouldn't blame him for the Brunson injury. I mean, that's just going up for a layup and you land on someone's ankle, like whether he played 5 minutes or whether he played 100 minutes, I mean, that's just a freak thing that happens. So, I mean, I'm not going to get on him for them missing Brunson for what might amount to 3 weeks or a month or whatever it is. But I feel like playing hard and running your guys into the ground is a great way to tally regular season wins, which is why when I was on here before the season, I said that they would be the 2 seed. Now, obviously, I was wrong about that. Cleveland wound up being way better than we expected. But I mean,
Right.
You knew that they were going to be up high just based on how much they play their guys. And to your point, I mean, Anunoby and Bridges are leading the league in minutes. And I mean, Anunoby's actually missed a little bit of time with an injury and he's still up there in minutes. So, I mean, just to give you an idea of like how much they play their guys. And considering the league has got like a competition problem, I don't want to complain about that too much, but I think from an X's and O's standpoint, he gets exposed when they play some of the better teams. Now, I also have defended him. Everyone wants to point out, oh, they can't beat OKC, they can't beat Boston, they can't beat Cleveland. Those are the teams they're going to have to go through. And it's like, well, they've beaten Denver twice, they've beaten Memphis twice. I mean, like, it's not like they can't beat anybody.
Right.
They've beaten Indiana, they've beaten Milwaukee. So, I mean, it's just confined to those 3 teams. And I think most people would agree that those 3 teams are definitely better than them right now and projection-wise. But I think from an X and O standpoint, I feel like he gets you to play hard defensively. He gets you in the right spots, but I think he's a little limited in what he does offensively. I don't see like a lot of creativity there. I think it's pretty much just a 2-man game with Brunson and Cat and hope that Brunson makes a play. And I just don't see a lot of ingenuity that's happening there. Whereas like, with the Celtics, like in the playoffs, they're going to be hunting mismatches all game long. And because they're so switchable, that's just a style they're going to play. And I don't necessarily love how many threes the Celtics take, but I mean, like they have a style. I feel like there's going to be a lot of games in the playoffs where the Knicks are going to be in like a 1 or 2 possession game where they're just relying on Brunson to.
And only that, no, quick, but the Celtics also have pretty much been this team for years now. The 3-point high volume 3-point shooting team. It's gotten worse, honestly, but this is who they've been for years. So
true, but I think in the playoffs you're going to see like bogged down at the end of games, and the Knicks will probably be in a bunch of like 95, 91 playoff games, which in today's day and age seems hard to believe. But I just think that they're going to play well defensively, and offensively it's going to be a slog. And I think when you go up against a better team, those teams are going to have answers for them, especially when you get to scout that team and only play that team for a week and a half.
Yeah, even Mikal Bridges spoke out last week about the minutes. He said, quote, sometimes it's not fun on the body. You want that as a coach, but also talk to him a little bit, knowing that we've got good enough team where our bench guys can come in and we don't need to play 48 minutes or 47 minutes. It's people are now speak on this now. Like it's and I know people are going to say, oh, he's complaining about playing too much. But the thing is, though, you need to be also be smart about this. Like you need to utilize your roster for the 82 game grind, because if those bodies are not held up for April, May, and June when you need them the most, what good is it to kill these guys? It makes no sense.
And also, they're going to find ways to conserve minutes in games. So I mean, like if Bridges is getting tired playing 38 and 39, 40 minutes. He's not going to give you as much on offense, or, he's going to take a play off on defense. Like there's only so much energy they've got in reserve. And the reality is like Bridges has never missed a game in his NBA career. So, I mean, like if anybody is suitable to speak on this topic, it would be him, considering like he knows what it takes to get his body in shape for the grind that is an 82 game NBA season. So, and also like in defense of him, like I know everyone wanted to say like, oh, he should have kept it in-house. He shouldn't have talked about that publicly. It's a bad look, so on and so forth. I mean, I don't know this, but I mean, like, I'd be shocked if
He might have though.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, I'd be shocked if it wasn't a consensus of a few players. Not saying that he was designated the spokesman, but I'm sure that some of the other guys, all the Villanova guys have probably talked about it and been like, man, these minutes are catching up with me, that sort of thing. Like, I could see Josh Hart and him talking about that, like, wow, I'm exhausted today or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't rule that out. And so, like, I find it hard to believe that, like, in private, these guys are like, no, we're good with it. We're good with it. And then he just walked out and said, like, we need to play a few less minutes.
Right. All right. So I know we saw the game last night against Heat and Knicks last night. Tracy Morgan, saw thrown up on the court. And when I saw that, I'm like, well, he must know how I feel now watching the Miami Heat lately. Because that's exactly what I felt watching that game last night. I texted you last night during the game. I turned it off in the fourth quarter. It's like, I can't do this. Like, a site I used to write for back in the day, 10 years ago, Haha Hoops, because of Miami Heat was SB Nation. They had, in the first quarter, Heat up by 11. And they said, oh, Heat double-digit lead. Interesting. And I go, yeah, no, as you know, that's a bad sign for us. We're going to lose that again. And sure enough, not only we lost the lead, we lost by freaking, 20-something points. The Miami Heat, 8-game losing streak, worst losing streak they've had since 2007-2008 season, which they won 15 games. Now, granted, that was the year Dwayne Wade hurt his shoulder, and that was the year they traded Shaq, so that was a disastrous year, 15-win season for us. The Heat since then have been, even if they missed the playoffs, they've been competitive. What I've been watching these last 2 weeks, when you call it, it's not just like disappointing, it's unwatchable borderline. And I know we had a debate a couple weeks ago on the show about Spoelstra and overrated, underrated kind of thing, and I'm still on my grounds on that. But watching what I'm watching the last couple of weeks, man, it's absolutely, the fact they're still in the play-in and they're going to be in the play-in because of the East is that bad on the bottom, But at this point, if you're a Heat fan, do you really want to make the playoffs? Just kind of like get the best pick possible and rebuild from there. I mean, they've hit rock bottom. They really have.
Yeah,
for them, by their standards, of course.
Yeah, if they were going to tank, I mean, well, first of all, I mean, it looks like they're tanking. Whether or not they are or not, I mean, I don't think they are. I just think that they've got a couple of issues that they need to sort out. But I mean, the time to tank would have been 2 or 3 months ago. I mean, like, I feel like if you were going to tank in this draft, you really want to get like a top 4 or 5 pick. And not saying that they can't still get lucky in the lottery, but I mean, if they finish a season at 34 wins, 33, 34 wins, or whatever it is. And I mean, like, they should be more than that, but I mean, let's just say they win 34 games. Like,
yeah,
to really have done a good job tanking, you would have probably wanted to win like 20 or 25, but somewhere between there. So, I mean, at this point, you might as well just play it out. My issue is, well, I mean, it's a couple things. I mean, the reason why I'm critical of Spoelstra is, and I texted you this stat yesterday, but I mean, and credit the Hoop Collective for coming up with this stat, but I mean, Miami's net rating in the fourth quarter, that's points per 100 possessions. They're being outscored by 28.9 points. That's going
insane.
To the game.
That's insane.
So basically what that's saying is that, like, they're fairly competitive in all the other 3 quarters, and then they fall off a cliff in the fourth quarter. And my question would be, why is that happening? And as a coach, and look, I know that there were 2 games. One was against Brooklyn, one was against OKC, where they had like 8 and 9 points respectively in the fourth quarter, which, I mean, again, is totally unforgivable. But I mean, like, as a coach, how are they playing well for 3 quarters and then, like, consistently falling apart late in games? I'm looking at rotations. I'm looking at offensive sets. Like, how are you not getting, and like, they've been mostly healthy. I mean, it's not like they're trotting out. I mean, look, the Pacers won a game last night. This is what bothers me about some of these coaches, and you could include Spoelstra in this. I mean, the Pacers won a game last night without their entire starting lineup. I mean, they played Minnesota. They were playing Andrew Nembhard. That was the only starter, and he got ejected in I believe it was the third quarter. So, I mean, you have Obi Toppin scoring over 30 points. Benedict Mathurin had a big game. You have TJ McConnell playing a lot of minutes. I mean, the point is, like, they found a way to win a game missing 5 starters. So it's like, how come Miami with Bam Adebayo, an all-star, with Tyler Hero, an all-star, I mean, I know Wiggins is, missed time, but I mean, like, you still have guys that you've drafted who have been in your system. I feel like as a coach, you've got to be able to find ways to get something going when, I mean, like Duncan Robinson had a good game last night. So like, what is the excuse for basically the game being over early in the third quarter?
So it's for me, it's one thing like to lose to New York, lose to Boston, lose those teams that are are better right now, clearly better. Yeah. Minnesota, I get that, look, but to lose to Charlotte and to Washington and to teams that are way worse than you are, or teams on a level like Atlanta, to lose those games, especially at home too. Also, that's what's concerned for me. Like I didn't expect to win in New York last night. I didn't expect that because New York's a better team than we are right now. Okay. I say weak because I'm a fan. By virtue of obviously you can see it here on the screen. Is it right here? There we go, right there. It's to me, it's weird seeing an Eric Spoelstra led team fold like this because even in the losses, they'd be competitive. They weren't even competitive last night after that third quarter.
Yeah, I mean the last two games. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to say they didn't quit in the last two games. I mean, like to lose to Memphis by some 30 points.
Yeah.
When John Morant didn't even play. I mean, that's a hard sell. And I mean, and Spoelstra even came out after the game and said that like, I'm not absolved from this. And I think that was the exact phrasing he used. That
one thing about Spoelstra, and he'll tell you he's very accountable at the things he does. He's very accountable.
Yeah, and that's good that he's accountable, but he's got to come up with some solutions at some point. Because again, a lot of these teams that you're playing, I mean, if a third of the league or a quarter of the league, however you want to look at it, is tanking or openly not going to try and win every single game, the fact that you're on an 8-game losing streak with the potential to get worse, like that's not a good showing for them. And this is after, didn't 2 weeks ago Spoelstra make a comment like, "Oh, we don't tank, like that's not in our DNA,"
right,
something like that. So I mean, to then come out and lose 8 straight games right
now they're tied for 9 in the East, and right now them in Chicago, us and Chicago are neck and neck right now for 9 seed in the East. Okay, they can still get the 8 seed, but Orlando's like starting to play a little better now. Well, no, not really. They won a couple big games here and there, but like that 7 through 10 it's wacky. Miami. It's just weird seeing this meltdown. Look, they're gonna get in the playoffs because they're still got a 6-game lead with Toronto, but in playing rather. But to see this though, this the way they're playing at this late stage of the year, it's wacky to see that from a Heat team that we've seen even in years where they shouldn't have been as good. They still are competitive, and not even competitive now in some of these games, and that's frightening for me. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say they need to get a new coach, and because I think it's ridiculous. Because you find if Eric Spoelstra hits the market, that dude will have a job in the next 24 hours. So,
no, they don't need to fire him, but I mean, like, I need to see something from him too. And look, he said he was accountable after the game last night, so he gets credit for that. But I mean, I feel like there are other coaches in this league who are finding ways to win games. Rick Carlisle being one of them last night,
and with less, right?
With less, and I mean, like you look at the 76ers last night. I mean, like they lost in overtime, but I mean, like they are literally throwing out a lineup that's trying to lose. Like the general manager wants to lose every game, and they still found a way in regulation to put up 131 points.
Right.
With guys that are being thrown out. It's like a major league situation where like, they're putting together a roster and intentionally lose games. So, I mean, like, what is your excuse when you have multiple all-stars? And I mean, part of it is like internal too. Like part of it, like for me, like Bam, like he phenomenal defensive player, but like he has never gotten his offense to a point that's near passable. I mean, like, and I think I heard Tim Legler say after the game last night that like it is what it is with his offense at this point, which is insinuating that it's just not good. I mean,
no doubt.
I just feel like it makes it hard when like he's 6'9", 6'10". He can't stretch the floor from 3. I mean, look, he's made some threes this year, but I mean, like, he's not a reliable 3-point shooter. And like, if you look at their roster, and this is where like Pat Riley, and I think I mentioned you last night, like he should come out and say something, because like their roster, like all their players are like one-dimensional in the sense that like Jaime Jaquez, for example, I think he's like great footwork. He's got a lot of Jimmy Butler in him, like great player, not super athletic, but like can't shoot at all. So I mean, so like a good finisher, like good around the rim, like he's a very heady player. Like with the footwork, he's got some like Brunson and Butler in him. But I mean, like they'll just leave him wide open from three. He can't hit threes. Bam can't hit threes. Great defensive player, not a good offensive player. Then you go on offense, it's like Robinson's a great shooter, not a great defender. Tyler Hero's a great scorer, not a great defender. So, I mean, it's like they don't have guys that do both. And then you look at Wiggins, who should be a guy who can kind of do both.
Yeah.
Like, he's not available a lot. And he wasn't available a lot in Golden State either. So,
do you think the trade with Jimmy, and for the record, I still say, even with Golden State surging as they are right now, I still like the trade to Miami in, because I don't think Jimmy is going to do what is doing in with Miami now. I think Miami will still have to. They may not be as bad as they are now, but they're still in the play-in with Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler is in the right situation, because he's now the number 2 guy, the number 1. So people are going to say, well, the trade, they shouldn't have done it. No, he's in the right situation. Like, Jimmy Butler is playing behind Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the captain of that team. He's the guy in that team. So to me, it's less about the Jimmy trade and more about figure out this roster, because to be honest, on paper, it's a decent roster in Miami. It's a decent roster they can work with.
Yeah, I'm not going to fault them for the trade, because like Jimmy Butler at his age and having been in the league as long as he's been, like, he's not carrying a team like he was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Like, you can't expect him to drag a team to a title. At least in Golden State, he's the second option where like he can do some heavy lifting, but offenses or opposing defenses are still looking at the Golden State offense, and they're looking at Curry first. Like, he's
absolutely not
first,
Jimmy.
second, and third on their scouting report. So I mean, Butler's what he's being asked to do in Golden State is certainly a lot less. He's being more of a connector than he is being like the guy that handles everything. And also, like, he wasn't available a lot either in Miami. So like during the regular season, the reason why they keep finishing in the play-in or below expectations, let's say, is because he's not overly available in the regular season.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily going to blame them for that. I mean, it's disappointing that Wiggins hasn't been more available. But I think on paper, when you look at that trade, it's like, okay, Wiggins will at least help space the floor a little better, and he can defend on the other end. So.
And he has played well in most of the games he's played so far.
Yeah, and given his age, he's a lot younger than Butler. Like, I don't really blame them for saying we've gone as far with Butler as we can go, and without making a short-sighted trade to try and get some older player and giving up future draft picks that still might not put us over the top. I don't have a problem with them pivoting to go in the other direction.
Right. By the way, I just took a peek at the standings real quick. I just realized the Houston Rockets are 1-7 in a row. Number 2 in the West now, tied with Detroit. Denver, rather. Yeah,
their schedule really softened. So, I mean, if you look at the games that they've played recently, you're not going to find a murderer's row there. But hey, you gotta play who's in front of you.
Yeah, again.
I mean, last night's game, they were losing by 8 with a minute left, and the tanking Sixers found a way to give it back to them. Missed free throws, turnovers.
Wow.
3-point game, 5 seconds left. They foul, which was the right move, but they didn't play a center last night. I mean, again, they threw a lineup out there playing a 6'7" swingman at center. And of course, when they intentionally missed the free throw, Alperen Şengün just went right over O'Shea Brissett and just tapped it in. I mean, and people will say, oh, that Şengün like mauled him. It should have been an offensive foul or whatever.
Right.
It's like, look, when you're 5-6 inches taller and 40, 50 pounds heavier, like, they're not going to give you that call. So
are we sure Ime Udoka is not coach of the year? Because I think to look at this standings, like, okay, and look, OKC deserves what they're doing, the Flowers, and obviously what they're doing in Cleveland, obviously Bickerstaff. But damn, not Bickerstaff. Who's the coach? It's Atkinson, right?
Atkinson in Cleveland, JB
right.
Bickerstaff
in Detroit, right?
And both those guys will be on the list. I mean,
right, but
JJ Redick and Ime Udoka rounding out. Like
Ime in that conference, though. Gotta get some looksies though, definitely. Milwaukee Bucks. They're hard to figure out. They have recovered now. Remember, they started a year slow. I think like 2-10. I think it was at one point.
I want to say they started 2-11.
2-11, yeah, even worse. And now they're the 4th seed in the East. Right now, tied for Indiana right now. Currently, who's also another team that started slow and they caught on. But I have an issue figuring out who they are, because now you see, the Bucks narrative last couple of years now has been the windows might be closed because they after winning the title in 2021 they've had an injury that cost him the title. Like Giannis missing a couple of runs, Chris Middleton was no longer on the team anymore, miss a run here, and whatnot. And I'm looking at the Eastern Conference. I'm like, you have Cleveland, you have Boston, and obviously New York to discuss earlier. What does Milwaukee fit in all this now for you?
I think their ceiling is second round. I mean, like, I think they'd be in a dogfight with Indiana in the first round, and if they're healthy, perhaps getting past Indiana. But I mean, again, if they're healthy, I mean, part of the reason why they haven't had any success lately is because Giannis has missed the last 2 playoffs with injury. So I mean, like, that plays a big role in it. He's got to be available for them. I mean, last year they had Middleton dragging them through the end of games, and they still couldn't make it out of that series. But I mean, the team is so centered around Giannis that if he's not available, it starts there. But let's assume that he is available. On paper, they're a good team. They've got players all over the place. Lopez is a good defender. They've got shooters and Taurean Prince and AJ Green and Gary Trent. And Gary Trent can play a little defense. And so like they've done a decent job surrounding guys. I don't know that Kuzma's actually been very good defensively for them. Like I would say that when he was guarding SGA on Sunday, he actually did a fairly good job. If you look at SGA's numbers, like he shot like well below 50%. So I mean, like he made him work for his points. But offensively, I mean, he's not a great 3-point shooter. I mean, he shoots below league average. And again, he just got there a month ago. So I mean, it's probably hard to ask him to slide in seamlessly where like he's getting passes off cuts and finishing at the rim and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know that that's like the difference maker that was going to put them over the top. And that was probably the best that they could do with Middleton's salary, knowing that Middleton like can't really, like, again, guys that can't carry a load, like he couldn't even carry like a reserve load. Like he just knee injuries, ankle injuries, so on and so forth. They pretty much had to move on from him just to get someone in his spot who could run up and down the floor. But I don't know that Kuzma is putting them over the top. But I'd like to see them play Cleveland in the second round. Like that would be.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like you when I asked you that question, you said they're a good team. But
yeah,
they have a guy who's I still will say is still a top 3 player in the league, right? You would say Giannis the top 3 in the league still?
Yeah.
You have Giannis. You have Dame Lillard who's having a fantastic year for record. A fantastic year. You trade out old ass broken down Middleton for Kuzma for a younger contract, a better contract. They have good players on their roster. Obviously, there's a window there, a ceiling there. But you're saying that their ceiling is the second round of playoffs. To me, that's not good enough then. To me, like this team, if you tell me the ceiling is the conference finals, I could say, okay, well, that I get. But you mean to tell me they can't beat Cleveland or Boston?
I think they've got a better chance against Cleveland than they do against Boston. I mean, I wouldn't pick them to beat either one of them, but I would at least say how many more times can Al Horford like shut down Giannis when Al Horford's like 100 years old,
right?
39. But how many more times can they just keep throwing Al Horford at him and playing him? But I mean, if the season ended today, they would play Cleveland in the first round. And I mean, I look at Cleveland and I'm like, okay, they can throw Evan Mobley on him. They can on Giannis. They can throw Jared Allen on Giannis. I guess the one weakness that Cleveland will have to face is that like their backcourt is going to maybe be a little exposed as far as defensively with Garland and Mitchell. I think that's where Boston has the advantage because like you're still throwing Drew Holiday and Derek White out there, and Jaylen Brown can switch, right? and Tatum can switch, and you can pretty much go 1 through 5 with those guys guarding anybody. And again, I know we talked last week about Drew Holiday. Like he doesn't have to be on Milwaukee. He would have had to have been the second best player. On Boston, he can be the 5th best player and just go out there, guard, orchestrate the offense, and then just fit in. So I don't know. I think I like what Boston poses defensively. I think Cleveland's weakness will be guarding. So I mean, like, look, could Dame have a big series like going up against those guys on offense? Like, yeah, that's why I'd like to see that series more so because from a Milwaukee perspective, because I feel like that would have some intrigue to it. I don't see any way that they would be able to get past Boston.
Right. How surprised are you how good the Pistons have been this year? Detroit Pistons have been good this year?
pretty surprised. I mean, like, I can explain it, but I mean, I wouldn't have expected it. Like, I know what they did in the offseason. They went out and added Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway. And basically what that does is just it opens spacing around the floor for Cade Cunningham. Like, Detroit had no shooting last year. So, I mean, even Tobias Harris is an above average 3-point shooter. He's not a volume 3-point shooter, but still a good shooter.
Right.
But they basically said Cade Cunningham's not like a prototypical strong shooter from distance. He likes to operate in the paint, back guys down. We need to put shooters around him. And that sort of opened up the entire floor for their offense. And also, like, they've got some tough guys on their team. Like, they play hard, they defend well, and Bickerstaff's done a good job. I mean, again, I don't know that he's some sort of X's and O's wizard. I don't think that he did a great job developing Evan Mobley when he was with Cleveland, which is why I think Cleveland has taken the step that they have this year, because I think Atkinson had a much better way of utilizing him than just, sticking him in the corner and hoping that at some point he's going to learn to run threes, shoot threes. Now Atkinson runs plays for him, lets him initiate the offense, all that sort of stuff. But, good coaching. They spaced the floor, but I just because they made those moves didn't necessarily make me think that they would jump from being a team that had lost 26 straight games to a team that's like
a 6 seed
to be
a playoff team. That is like,
but it's not just a 6 seed. If you look at their schedule going forward, like, it's probably not a good chance, but like there's a non-zero chance that they could move up to like 4. It would take some heavy lifting, and they need some other things to happen. They play Milwaukee the last 2 games of the season, so I mean, like, that could, in theory, be a playoff preview if they continue winning. Milwaukee stumbles a little bit out of the gate. I mean, if you look at, let me see here. I just had the standings up. I'm only 2 games behind Indiana, and there's still
and Milwaukee.
Yeah, and there's 13 games left in the season. So I mean, it's maybe it's not likely, but it's there for them. So
yeah. By the way, Cade Cunningham's fun to watch, man. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and assume, because we're gonna do the NBA awards on the show. You and I, most likely, next month when we do the awards for every year. Most improved player, I think, is easily Cade Cunningham, right? Easily.
Yeah, I mean,
with a bullet.
If you look at it like, can a guy who's a number 1 overall pick win most improved player because he came into the league with high expectations? I mean, yes, from where he was last year to where he is this year,
the injuries and all that stuff.
It's a no-brainer. He's a lock for that.
What would you put him among? Cause he's a point guard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he plays the 1 and 2, like whatever, like Luka, same thing.
Yeah.
Where would you put him in the hierarchy of point guards in the league?
Oh, geez.
So you have the Curry. I mean, obviously SGA number 1.
SGA, right?
Curry, Dame still.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, I don't know if I'd rather have him than Dame, only because of his size. I mean, obviously Dame's a much better shooter, but I know that Cunningham will give me more on defense.
I mean, bigger picture, you take Cade because of the
youth.
Yeah, but so right now, it's
isolating.
Frame.
Yeah, isolating it for this season, sure.
So is he a top 5 point guard in the league right now, or you need to see more of that one?
It's borderline. I mean,
Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, so Brunson, Luka.
You know what? That's actually a good topic to have next week on the podcast. Then do ranking our top 5 point guards in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably borderline. He's either 5th or 6th, somewhere around there. So I mean, you could make an argument for him above Dame.
Ja's there.
I mean, I think I'd rather have Cunningham than Ja.
Because of the off court stuff, or just because of in general?
All of it, I guess. But I would say just strictly from a basketball perspective, I don't think. Not that Cade Cunningham is a great shooter from distance, but I think
maybe you should do that. Maybe next week on a pod should do that. Rank our top 5 point guards in the league. Power ranking style. It's a segment.
Yeah, I just think Cunningham is a slightly better player, especially like he's doing more with less, I would say.
That's true. It's a good point. It's a very good point. Okay. What else on the docket I have here? One more thing. Speaking of point guards and greatness, and I mean OKC Thunder. I mean, I know it's become a topic on the show for every week now. We talk about them all the time, but they're doing really good things here, and you can't ignore it. They continue to surge right now. They've won 9 last 10 games, obviously 3 in a row currently. Won a big game against Boston last week in a possible finals preview. You now have the situation now. They just beat Milwaukee this past Sunday on the road in a blowout. So they're winning games on the road and beating really good teams in doing so, and then beating them pretty soundly. I mean, at this point, is this to me? It goes back to the debate last week about the MVP thing, and I understand people's defense of Jokic. Trust me, I get it. Both things can be right. You said in the podcast last week, both things can be right. Jokic, best player in the league, not even close. Also, Shea, by virtue of everything that's happened this year with that team, not having Chet for more than half the year, injuries, and not missing a beat. Right now, they are 12 and a half games up on everybody else in the West. Again, you can't ignore what the Thunder are doing here. It's just amazing.
Yeah, when I was watching that game on Sunday against Milwaukee, and to our point a couple minutes ago, I don't think Milwaukee is a title contender, but the way that they were just able to totally bog down the Milwaukee offense with no Lou Dort and no Jalen Williams,
right.
That was pretty eye-opening to me. Not that the wins against Boston weren't and stuff like that, but I mean, like I look at Boston, I'm like, I don't know if the game is as important to them as it is to OKC. As a defending champ, they don't really have as much to lose. But just the way that they were able to totally shut down the Milwaukee offense to where like Giannis is like scratching and clawing to get a layup down 20. I looked at that and I'm like, I could see this team winning a title this year, like even over the teams in the East, like not just winning the West, but like they're right there with Boston. I mean, like you could very easily make the argument that OKC is the best team in the league, and mainly because of what they can do defensively. To your point earlier about the Lakers, like just in terms of the switchability that they have, okay, they can take Hartenstein out and play Holmgren at the 5, or they can take Holmgren out and play Hartenstein at the 5 and go small with wings, or they can take both of them out, play both of them. Like, there's just so many options depending on the team they're going against that I feel like no matter what team they face, they have a counter to what they want to do. It's like, if you were to look at Cleveland, it's like, okay, we have 2 small guards. We could run into problems if we face team X. But like with Oklahoma City, I don't look at their roster and say there's nothing that they can't slow down. My only concern for OKC is, are they going to have enough shooting? And, I've mentioned that a number of times. Like if they have a downfall at some point in the playoffs, it's going to be because they couldn't make enough threes and another team got hot from 3 against them.
Right. I mean, this team's incredible. I mean, obviously, you want to see them in a 7-game set. Obviously, there's a lot of things about like, oh, well, they're young. I don't know, man. I see. I know they did this ish last year, but this team just looks and feels different than last year. They feel mature for the young ages, and that's the thing. That's just what's different about this team. So I think at this point, I would take them to win the West at this point now. And honestly, you can talk me to them beating Boston or Cleveland in the 7-game series in the finals if you ask me right now in the middle of March. All right, a couple of things to get out of here. College basketball related here. The tournament starts technically tonight. We have to play in games, right? I think it is I want to ask you though, before we get to the prediction on the tourney, because I did do a bracket for I don't normally do brackets every year, but I did one this year. What draft prospects should we be keeping our eyes on in this tourney?
So, I mean, I've watched more college basketball this year than I have in the past 10 years, just because this was going into the year, this was slated as a generational draft. Like if you had your first round pick this year and you weren't projected to be a good team, like this was the year to go all out to try and tank. I think next year, the top 5 next year is probably going to be better than the top 5 this year. But I think this year has got better depth. Like you could get guys like, Rasheer Fleming out of St. Joseph's at 17, let's say, whereas maybe next year he might go like 8. And again, it's just me projecting, but I think that there are a few higher end stars next year. But like this is a good draft no matter where you pick. So like if Miami's got like the 13th pick, I still think that's like a good spot to get like an impact player for next year. But I mean, if you're looking for teams specifically to watch for the next couple of weeks, I mean, Duke is obviously one of them because they've got 3 guys who are probably going to go in the lottery. I mean, Cooper Flagg is the consensus, no doubt, number 1 pick. I don't know that he's like this outstanding scorer or shooter, but like he just always makes the right play. He's athletic. He's a good passer, good finisher. Good defender. Like he just does everything really well. So I feel like, when people talk about Kevin Durant, like, oh, you can play him on any team. He's obviously not the shooter that Durant is, but like he could slot into any team tomorrow and you'd have no problem incorporating him.
Yeah.
as far as a mock draft goes, I mean, the second and third or second and fourth, depending on how you want to look at it, best players went to Rutgers. And obviously Rutgers isn't in the tournament. They had a terrible year from a team perspective. So you're not going to see Dylan Harper. You're not going to see Ace Bailey. Both had pretty good years. I would say finished slow, but started out well. For the tourney, though, Baylor, you'll see VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson out of Texas. So Trey Johnson will play tomorrow night because Texas is in the playing game. He's probably not the best defender, but at 6'6", he can get any shot on the floor. He's a good shooter, kind of a volume shooter, though. So, I mean, like, I don't know that every shot that he takes is like the ideal shot, but he can create his own shot. So, I mean, I still see him probably going 5, 6, somewhere around there. But I mean, like, if you're looking for teams to watch, I mean, Jeremiah Fears, the point guard for Oklahoma, Michigan State, Jace Richardson. That's Jason Richardson's son. For those.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, for those people who are watching, who watched in the early 2000s and are used to.
Jason Richardson. So good. He was so fun to watch, though, too.
Winning the dunk contest a couple times.
Yeah. He's a good player, though.
Yeah, but I mean, VJ Edgecombe is probably the most interesting player outside of Flag, just because you're not getting the Rutgers guys. And I mean, Baylor had a good season. I mean, you look at the comparisons, and like people will say like Oladipo. Like, I think that like there's a potential for him to be better than that. 6'6", 6'7", swingman, can shoot the three fairly well. Good defender. I think that's what would separate him between like a Trey Johnson. Maybe he can't score as well as Johnson can. But he's more efficient and he's going to play defense. So, I mean, like Trey Johnson, like they were hunting him a little bit in that, in their last game in the SEC tournament. And then going down the list, Derek Queen from Maryland, center, kind of like a polarizing player, 6'10", can shoot a little bit. You know, the knock on him is that like he's not super athletic, but I mean, like he can score pretty much from anywhere. He's a good passer. The two guys that I need to watch, though, in this tournament that I haven't really paid a ton of attention to, Asa Newell out of Georgia, 6'10" power forward, JT Toppin of Obi Toppin fame. You know, I was
just asking that in relation to that.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, Texas Tech has JT Toppin. He played at New Mexico last year, but he transferred to Texas Tech this year. Asa Newell out of Georgia. And rounding it out, I mean, another polarizing player, I would say, would be Kasparas Yakachonis out of Illinois, 6'6" point guard. I think maybe his stock took a little bit of a hit towards the end of the year. I think, you know, everybody wants to like compare him to Luka, but I mean, the reality is like he's not, from a shooting perspective, I wouldn't say he's there yet. But I mean, if you told me like, oh, he's going to go play on Toronto or something like that, you know, I'd be like, okay, like he'll probably be a solid player or something, you know, just putting good players, athletes around him that can make use of his floor vision, all that sort of stuff. So, and I mean, if you want to just pick a team, again, go with Duke because Common Malwalk, the center, he's probably gonna be the most interesting prospect in the draft just because like he really hasn't been playing basketball that long. It's kind of like an Embiid situation where he came to basketball late in life, but like he's super athletic, you know, over 7 feet tall, huge wingspan, just totally raw. You know, I mean, his game just isn't polished. So even if you watch a Duke game, he'll only be playing like 20, 22 minutes. It's not like they're playing him 36 minutes like they're playing Cooper Flagg. Like he's still learning the game. It's just that he has measurables that you just kind of can't teach. And then Con Knipple will be like the 3-point shooting specialist who's also projected to go in the lottery. I would say he's a better overall player than like your typical like NBA like 3-point shooter. Like he can handle the ball, he can play make a little bit. So I wouldn't just pigeonhole him as a 3-point shooter. Although I wouldn't, you know, he's probably like the 9th or 10th best prospect in the draft. But
so you had Duke, right?
Duke as far as winning the tournament?
Yeah. What was your final four? Did you do a bracket?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So my final four was Duke, Tennessee, Michigan State, and Florida.
So I have most of 3 of the 4. I have Duke against Duke, Purdue, Michigan State, and Florida.
Okay. Yeah. The reason I went with Tennessee is because like their defense is arguably like one of the best defensive teams in the country.
Right.
And the reason why I picked them going to the finals was because I'm like, I could see a young team like Duke like running into trouble against that sort of defensive scheme.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
So, I mean, you always wonder about teams that are built with freshmen or freshmen and sophomores where it's like they haven't been together for a long time. So that's the only question mark I would have for Duke. And not to say that I don't have them going to the Final Four or the Elite Eight or anything like that. I just think that, like, from a championship perspective, that could be the one thing that holds them back.
Yeah, I like the safe bet is Duke. I will say the Cooper Flag injury, like, keep an eye on that, obviously. I know people say that maybe you should keep him out for the first game here. That way, if because they should beat the play-in team they play on Thursday or Friday, you get an extra week of rest for Flag and play him the second game, which will be either on the Saturday or the Sunday. And then go from there. But I'm telling you guys again, look, I don't want to say this because I'm not a fan of the school, obviously, because the school I root for is their biggest rival. I'm a Florida State fan. Mm-hmm. Florida is the biggest wild card of this entire bracket. I think Florida is playing red hot basketball right now. And if I had to pick a team outside of Duke to win it all, it'd be Florida. I have Florida beating Duke in the championship game. I have Duke winning that game because obviously Flag and company. But Florida is the biggest, to me, the team that can to make things very interesting in the bracket. And I said someone who has not watched college basketball this year, like as much as probably you have this year. Mm-hmm. I'm an NBA. It's tough because I used to be a diehard college guy growing up, but I'm an NBA diehard, and it's hard for me to watch everything. It's like something's got to give. You got to pick one or the other. I mean, I'm always going to choose the NBA anytime, twice on Sunday. So,
yeah, no, I've always been an NBA guy. I've never been like a huge college guy, but the reason this year I was is because of how the draft is supposed to be. Like, there's so many players that are supposed to be impact players at the next level. It's more like a scouting sort of thing. Whereas like last year, I watched almost none of it because it was considered a weak draft. So this year was considered a really strong draft. So I would watch all these games. And I mean, again, I watched the most of Rutgers just because they had two players on the same team that are slotted to go in the top 5.
Right. So it should be an interesting situation in college basketball. Anyway, follow Greg on Twitter at G Hrinya, as GHRINYA NBA. It took me 3 weeks to say without fumbling. You know what I mean? Come on, brother.
Yep, you got it.
He's also the the author of the Brooklyn Nets book that I'm still haven't even finished reading. It's sitting here on my phone. I'm halfway through the damn book. I have not finished it yet because again I have ADHD and I can't focus on any damn thing. That's why I have too much shit going on, Greg. I got obviously with this podcast, I got doing this with you. I have obviously NFL free agency is going on right now. That's a big deal. You got wrestling's a big deal on this feed too. Also, you talk WrestleMania season now. You have that. There's so much going on, and I'm still a husband and a father. So.
Well, there's no rush on the book. It's been out for 10 years. It's not going anywhere. So.
I know. I mean, I did buy it. That was just Yeah. So I gotta finish this out though. But yeah, you'll be as you guys know, he'll be on the show every week. Again, guys, thanks for watching the show on Twitter. Of course, on YouTube at Earnest Speak Podcast on YouTube as well too. It's officially Earnest Speak Podcast page. Follow us on TikTok as well too at Earnest Speak Pod on TikTok as well. Go ahead and argue with me about how me and Greg are wrong on our takes and whatnot. And till the next episode, we'll talk to you guys later.